The latest development in the killing of Trayvon Martin is that ABC News is now reporting that Chris Serino, the lead homicide investigator the night Trayvon Martin was killed, recommended that George Zimmerman be charged with manslaughter the night of the shooting. We contacted Detective Chris Serino tonight. He is a 15-year veteran of the Sanford Police Department and told us that he is observing the department's rules of not divulging any of the details of his investigation. But Detective Serino, the lead homicide investigator on the case the night of the shooting of Trayvon Martin, told us tonight that he feels very positive about the new investigations. He is very encouraged by those investigations, and his words, he is looking forward to the truth coming out. Joining me now is Joe Oliver, friend of George Zimmerman. Joe, thank you very much for joining me tonight.
Well, thank you for having me.
First of all, how long have you known George Zimmerman?
I've known George about 6 years. I've known him ever since he started dating his wife. His mother-in-law is a close friend of the family.
So you've only known him socially?
Yes, mostly socially.
You've never been in the same workplace?
You know, I'm sure that information is out there, but I know where he works.
I've come across some information that indicates you've both worked at the same place at the same time. Can you confirm that?
You know, if you've come across that information, then you have come across that information. You know, I am not working right now as I'm trying to help George.
And how are you paying your expenses if you're not working? Is someone paying you to do this for George?
No, no one is paying me to do this for George. I've been trying to contact George since shortly after this happened, because I was well aware of the firestorm of media interest that was going to happen. And I've been trying to contact him in order to offer my help because of my experience with the media. It wasn't until this weekend, when I learned that he had retained an attorney, that I contacted him through his attorney and spoke with him and validated for myself that I would be doing the right thing for standing up for George.
Joe, I want to get into how well you know him, and that's why I'm asking about the workplace. Did you spend time together in the workplace?
Occasionally, yeah.
Okay, and have you ever been alone with George Zimmerman?
Yes, I have.
In the workplace?
Yes, I have.
And did you have private conversations with him over the years about his experience with law enforcement?
Not his experience with law enforcement, but I've had conversations with him about why he was a criminal justice major.
And did you know him when he was arrested in 2005?
No, I did not.
Did he ever tell you about that?
No, I did not. But what I've learned from that arrest is that it was for coming to the aid of a friend who was being arrested as well.
Yeah, I can tell you exactly how that arrest was described by Agent Paul Fleischman. This is according to the Miami Herald today. Agent Paul Fleischman wrote that Zimmerman walked up to a pal under arrest and began chatting, refusing to leave. Zimmerman cursed him, Fleischman wrote, before pushing him and causing a short struggle. That is the police account of that arrest.
Well, like I said, I wasn't there, and I would think that during that time, George may have been drinking. George, I don't know, because as long as I've known him, he hasn't drank.
Do you know that George, whether George had to enroll in anger management classes as a result of that case?
No, I don't, but I would imagine that would have been part of what he went through in order to avoid any charges sticking.
And Joe, you got to know him first in the workplace, or when he became engaged to someone you knew?
I've known him since he's met his now wife and started dating her.
And did that wife know that his previous fiancée had brought charges against him?
I would think so.
But you don't know that.
I don't.
Did you know that?
No, I did not.
Did her mother know that? Because you know her mother.
I don't know. You'd have to ask her.
Have you discussed that with anyone? The charges of violence brought against him by his former fiancée?
I've not had any reason to discuss the violent history he may have had.
Well, Joe,
and
here's why we're discussing. Hang on,
Lawrence,
if
if you would allow me to answer your question completely and fully, then maybe we can go on with this discussion. Now, as far as what happened with George before I met him, For me, that's irrelevant, because whatever happened before I met him, he grew immensely from it to be a kind, gentle, giving, and caring individual, one who I trusted with my own child.
So you don't think that anyone's violent history has anything to do with evaluating their credibility when they are engaged in a violent act that becomes controversial?
I think their violent history becomes a factor when they don't alter their violent behavior. That's when I think that becomes a factor. I mean, why would we have this system where we give people an opportunity to learn from their mistakes and grow from them? And George Zimmerman learned from his mistakes and grew from them.
What mistakes did George Zimmerman tell you about that, and what did he tell? How did he tell you he grew from his mistakes?
I'm just saying, from what I have seen, the person that I know, the George Zimmerman I know, was not the George Zimmerman who was arrested in 2005. It's documented, if you've got the records there, that he did go through anger management. What's the point of having someone go through anger management if they're not going to alter their behavior? If George had to go through all of that,
Joe,
it was very successful. It was very successful.
Joe, come on, don't be silly.
I'm not being silly.
Just stop it. You don't believe that anger management actually successfully manages the anger of everyone who goes through anger management. You're not that naive about this.
You know what? You're right. I'm not. And it doesn't work for everyone. And I didn't know that George had been through that. And if he had been through that, if he had been through that, then I know it worked for at least one person.
Okay, quickly. You said that you talked to him about this for the very first time on Saturday. Did his lawyer arrange that discussion, and did his lawyer participate in that discussion?
No, his lawyer did not participate in that discussion.
Okay. And you have said that you needed to have that conversation with him on Saturday in order to go out and publicly defend him. Tell us now what you learned from George Zimmerman on Saturday that you did not know before your conversation with him. What was the turning point in your conversation with him that changed your understanding of this so that you could confidently come here and defend him about his actions in something you did not witness?
My conversation with George was between me and George, and being an African-American male and understanding what was going on with George's involvement in this, and with my experience, I mean, first of all, I had to ask myself, what am I going to do for this person that I consider as a friend? I wasn't going to go off with just the information that was being fed out there, that all we knew about what had happened, which, again, if I didn't know George Zimmerman, I'd be outraged myself. There's no question about that.
Joe, these are your talking points that you've used on every show. That is a non-credible answer. You have
That's your opinion.
You've claimed to have a conversation with him that changed your understanding of the facts. And now you want to go out publicly and say, I will not share with anyone what George Zimmerman told me to change my opinion of the facts so that I could go out and defend him. I don't want to hear your talking points that you've used on every show you've been on. Now, I have Charles Blow here with me from the New York Times. He has some questions for you.
Hi, Mr. Oliver, I'm just curious. You say you have known George Zimmerman for 6 years.
Yes, I have.
But you say you were close friends with George Zimmerman. However, he never shared with you.
Now let's back up. Because you're going to continue. You're going to continue mischaracterizing what I've said. Because a lot of times
you were good friends with George Zimmerman. However, he never shared anything with you about his past, his violent past. He never shared with you whether or not he had been through any anger management courses. You said yesterday on television that you have not physically laid eyes on George Zimmerman since a week before this incident and have not to this day. How can you claim that you are a close friend of George Zimmerman when none of that is true of you? You don't really know George Zimmerman if you don't know those things about George Zimmerman, and if you don't know where George Zimmerman is, and if you have not seen him in over a month, and you have been going out saying that George cannot stop crying, which you cannot verify because you were not there. You have been saying, nope. You have been saying that there are lacerations and his nose is broken. And only thing you know is what George may have told you because you were not there and you have not seen him for over a month. None of this rings true. You're playing people like they're stupid, and we're not.
And I'm not a stupid man either. I know
Okay.
what I'm putting myself up against, and I know the repercussions of this. I'm stepping forward for George because this was not a racial incident. I'm stepping forward for George because of how it has ignited all the racial tensions that we've had here for years. I understand everything that everybody is out there marching about because I've experienced it myself. And I wouldn't put myself on the line like this if I didn't know in my heart that George Zimmerman was in a life or death struggle. I wouldn't be here. I would not be risking myself.
How do you know that in your heart? How do you know in your heart?
Have you ever had a gut feeling?
You were not there.
Have you ever had a gut feeling?
So this is a gut
Were you
feeling.
there?
So this is
Were
not
you there?
admissible in any court.
Were you there?
No, I'm asking you because you are the one who is saying you know in your heart that George Zimmerman was in a life or death situation, and I'm saying that we don't know. I'm saying that we have to wait till the investigation is finished, and you are saying that you know that that was George Zimmerman. You said on television that you know that that was George Zimmerman's voice crying out for help. And you have only known George for 6 years, and you have only seen him in social situations. His mother told me that she is absolutely 100% sure that that is her son, and she has known that boy for 17 years. She has heard him cry many times from a child all the way up to 17. She is saying, are you saying that you know George Zimmerman's voice better than Trayvon's mother knows his voice?
I'm saying, and as you know, Lawrence has pointed out, I've had numerous conversations with George, and because now it's been revealed.
Have you ever heard George Zimmerman scream?
You know what? What is the point of you asking me questions if you're not giving me an opportunity to answer? Okay?
Answer the question.
And as far as George raising his voice, yeah, I've heard him raise his voice before.
Scream.
Not in anger.
Scream.
Not in anger.
Scream.
Would you know what? Why are we having this discussion
why are
if
we
you're not
having this
listening?
conversation?
If
Joe,
you're not
hold-
listening to my answers,
Joe,
if
we're
you're
gonna
not giving
listen.
me a chance to finish my
You don't
answers,
have an answer.
why are we having this
don't have an
discussion?
answer.
Joe, let's see what we can do here. I've listened carefully. You've said for you the entire thing, your entire view comes down to a gut feeling. That's all it is. And okay, and I'm glad you
Not just a
clarified
gut
that.
feeling.
Joe,
Not
Joe,
just,
hold
look,
on.
I've
Joe,
asked
I wanna move
questions.
on.
I've
Joe,
asked questions. Can I answer
Joe,
that?
you know what,
Can I
Joe?
ask you why it's a gut feeling and why I feel good about it? Because it's an instinctual thing, and it's
Okay.
also because I've had what I have been told validated. What you have heard so far that has been leaked has been is validating what I've been told. There's other information that is yet to come out that we're waiting for the grand jury to pass down. Okay? And when that comes down, then it's a question of whether or not anybody else believes what the investigation turns out. You know, we welcome the state's attorney looking into this. We welcome the grand jury. We welcome the Justice Department. We welcome all of this because, first of all, this was not a racial incident. And we welcome all of this because we know that if we weren't sitting here talking about George shooting Trayvon, we'd be talking about Trayvon shooting George.
Hey, Joe, we're going to get to that in a minute, the detail of that in a minute. I just want to explain to the audience that we've lost a little bit of the light in your studio, and so the image looks a little different here. I want to get to something that's been very important to a lot of people who saw you on Hardball yesterday, and I want to play a little clip of you there talking about this controversial element of the 911 tapes in which people think they hear a racial slur. And for you now, it seems to come down to a distinction of one letter. Is it a C or is it a G? Is it goon or is it the C word that goes with that? And I just want to listen to what you told Chris Matthews about that. And we'll try to get your light back while we're playing that tape. So let's just listen to this.
To me, it's a matter of interpretation of whether he's saying coon or goon. There are a lot of parts of this country where people proudly call themselves coon asses, in Louisiana in particular. And I don't know too many people who younger than 40 who use that term as a racial slur. As far as the other word, goon, I've been informed by my 17-year-old daughter that among her peers is a term of endearment.
Joe, as you know, there's been an awful lot of African-American reaction to that, starting with Charles Blow. Let's hear his reaction to that now.
Well, I grew up in Louisiana, and I have never once heard an African-American refer to an African-American in that way.
I never said an African-American.
Like you said before, you're going to let me finish.
I will.
And particularly as a term, any sort of term of endearment, and particularly, why would you insinuate that George Zimmerman was using that as a term of endearment, whether it's a C or a G, after the F word, about a person whom he found suspicious, about a person whom he was following with a gun? That is absolutely patently ridiculous.
You know, the characterization of what happened out there has been ridiculous, because the characterization that's been put out there is that George was following Trayvon with his gun drawn, and that's not correct.
Nobody said that. I didn't say that.
Joe, you're just dodging the question. But listen, we want to talk about this particular phrasing because it really has provoked a lot of outrage among African Americans. But please.
I will answer the question.
Okay,
I will answer the question because, you know, again, it all boils down to interpretation.
Joe, let me do this. Let me take a break right now so we can really fix your lighting during this commercial break, and then we want to hear your answer to this, because you know, as an African-American man, there are millions of people in this country who are very eager to hear you on this. We're going to take a break right now. We're going to be right back. Thank you, Joe.